as we're discussing it. So today we're going to cover foundational concepts, practical accountability structures. By the end, you'll understand governance, gaps, accountabilities, and failures you may not see that are occurring now as you're meeting with clients or within your own organization. So we're going to cover the definition of governance, oversight, approval models, why AI government means and why it matters. It matters right now. Oversight and approval models, how decisions flow through the organization. Decision ownership. Who's accountable for AI? Acts. All policies, controls, the guardrails that keep AI intact. An accountability framework. Structures for assigning and enforcing responsibility. It's really, really important right now that people understand who's accountable for what. Some individuals, an example today, I met with a client and the client didn't have any idea what they had to do regarding governance, what they were keeping track of, or what they needed to do. And this is a big organization. It wasn't a little small, mom and pop shop kind of thing. It's a big organization and they are not sure what to do. And that just made me think more as I was going on and I'm teaching this class is that we need to be aware of what's going on. We need to be on top of governance so much more than before. Okay, let's see. Next one. Oops. Oops, it's not going in there. Hold on. Got stuck. Hold on. There it is. Okay. What is AI governance? AI governance is a set of structures, policies, and processes by organizations that direct, manage, and oversee the development and deployment of artificial intelligence, AI. So it means who decides, who checks, and who is responsibility. I know you all can read, but sometimes I like to enforce it by saying it, because sometimes when we read, there's certain things that get our attention, and there's other things that don't. So I just think it's really important for every person to know that who decides, who checks, who's responsible. So the direction when you're working with governance, you want to make sure you're setting strategy, risk, and ethical boundaries for AI use. So many times, people are not sure about the responsibility and what are boundaries and who's overseeing. But we're going to go through that step by step. And for management, implementing policies and procedures and technical controls for AI systems. You'd be surprised how many people don't know what systems they currently are using, who is using AI, and who's making the decisions. And there has to be some steps and processes so that everyone is aware of that. Oversight and monitoring outcomes, auditing decisions, and enforcing accountability. That's a big thing too. So, there's a lot of areas of responsibility that everyone needs to have, and not everyone does. So why governance gaps are dangerous? Without deliberate governance, AI systems operate in a vacuum. Just like I'm saying, I know it's repetitive, but this is really what's going on now. Decisions get made, algorithms, vendors, or by individual teams. But sometimes you don't always tell people what you're working on, what AI you're using. You're doing things on the side, and maybe you're going into places you don't need to be going into. And you set up some systems that are not being monitored. So let's just say you left your job or somebody else was there, and nobody knows exactly what's happened. You need to know all the AI tools, everything that they're working with, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Microsoft 365, Claude, anything that has to do with AI, you really should document and let them know this is what you're using, how you're using it. So gaps emerge when they deploy faster, when they build the structures to management, because they have undetected biases, regulatory exposure, reputational damage that leadership discovers only after harm has occurred. And when I say that, like I said a minute ago, if they don't know, if I worked for you all and I made some changes and it worked smoothly, and then I left your company and you don't know what I did, and suddenly you're having problems with your AI, or there's things that aren't working, you're not sure why they're not working, and the only person who knew about it was moi, Bernadette. Guess what? I I'm the person in charge, but I'm gone. And I didn't leave a step by step of what I did. I did not even say what I used. And when you go back and you look at prompting or different things, you can't pick up everything. You have to know exactly what each person does. So governance gap is just not an IT problem. It's a leadership and legal liability that can escalate rapidly under regulatory scrutiny. That's what happens right now. And that's where people need to make sure that they're writing down what programs are using, what AI systems are using, everything. And I'm going to repeat this over and over because this really has to be repetitive and that people really understand. So, common governance gaps, no design AI decision owner, vendor AI tools deployed without internal review, no audit trail for automated decisions, policies that predate modern AI capabilities, and siloed AI projects with no enterprise visibility. So, what I would say to that is that we need to make sure that whoever is in charge of a program or who's designing something, when you get together with your group of individuals, let's just say if you own the company and you want to set up some sort of system, and you get your top people in there, everybody is aware of what's going on. You don't just have, let's just say, the president there and yourself, and then you don't have the financial person, the IT person, or any other divisions that should be at that meeting, because everybody knows their own piece of the pie, but don't share the piece of the pie, meaning you don't tell everybody what you're working on, you don't say what you're using, and it's not documented. And it could be, some are documented, but I would say 80% are not documented. So you need to make sure that you're doing that. And one thing now, it was really important, is when you are working and you're undergoing policies and procedures, you really should have policies that indicate that you are authorized to use AI within these parameters here. And let's say that you decide on your own you're going to mix another AI system, or throw in a Claude, or throw in something completely different that you're not familiar with. And then it messes up whatever you were working on, because they're maybe not working together, or maybe it's feeding it different information. And if you're not providing that, nobody knows what the issues are if you are not forthcoming about any changes that you made. And if you want to make changes, I would suggest always that you document that you made these changes. It's kind of like when you have applications or anything else. You always document, you know what you're doing, you're making changes to a program, or you want to redo it, but you always tend to make sure that you document. At least I'm a documenter. I like to have everything written, and so I know what I'm doing. And if there's a step I missed, I know what was included. But when you're using many, many tools and you're not documenting it, and you're not sure which is which, that's a problem right there. And if the company isn't aware that you're doing that, because you may feel like it's okay to do it, but it created a problem, and that problem could be costly. That problem could be out there in the internet where somebody finds it. You don't put your personal stuff out there from your personal computer regarding your business. You do not. If you're working and they want you to work within those parameters, that's what you need to do. If you're going to work outside those parameters, then you need to be honest about it and transparent. That's really, really important right now. So I can't stress that enough. A lot of transparency is probably the most important thing that's happening right now, and we need to let everybody know that. So policies need to be updated, have people sign off. I think earlier a minute, I probably showed something where there was a checklist that I had been working on, but those are important now because people don't think about it. So those are things that you may think about using in your own business, and siloed AI projects with no enterprise visibility. See, when we work away from home, before you could work away from home and do what you needed to do, and you use the same tools that you have. But when you steer away from the tools and you start making AI changes and using various AI products without documenting it, then that becomes problematic. So oversight and approval
I'm so
models.
sorry. Gabriel has his hand up.
Sorry,
Okay,
yes, I didn't want to interrupt
I
your
didn't see it.
flow. The
Hi, sorry.
no, no worries. Is the governance really just about asking the employees of an organization, hey, what tools are you using? And that's it. And then the company just providing documentation like, be sure you don't do the following within there? Or is it more about governing in a way that the organization needs to know that you're using that Bernadette's using her own chat GPT, and now the organization needs to connect to that, grab that data and see what she's doing in there, right? How do we balance that or determine that?
What you need to do is, first of all, if you haven't had a policy about governance or about AI or any applications, and is letting your individuals know you need to be careful about what you're doing, and we need to know what tools you're using as well. If you're comfortable with a person using whatever they want, I don't recommend that, simply because if somebody leaves and doesn't document the process or you don't know, then you could have a problem on hand. That's really the biggest thing. I think by documenting, you'd be surprised how many owners do not even know what their people are using. Besides, let's just say the standard, if you have standard applications, you know what they're using. But if you have AI and you're using ChatGPT, you're using some Claude, let's say you're using uh, Microsoft 365. It doesn't matter. I'm just using those as examples. I'm not picking on either of them. But what I'm saying is, if you make a change and you experiment and try different things out there and you're not protected and it gets out there, whose responsibility is it? If your person signs, your employee signs off saying they understand that any tools that they use that are outside of what you currently allow right now and really shouldn't be working away from home, or with, depending on what it is, the severity of it, or how top secret it is, or if it has anything to do with people and their names and you let it out, and it's the privacy thing too, because that comes back to bite you in the behind. And I know that this particular customer um, had no idea that that their employee was working away from the office. And before, you could work from home, but you really should work on, if you have a connection, a private connection that you can work on, multi-authentication, anything like that, that's different because But if they're not using any of those things and they make changes and you're not aware of it, then that's when it becomes problematic. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't see that, Alex. If you'll just remind me, because then I get kind of carried away talking. So,
Not a problem at all.
so, so the board and executive layers. So I think it's important for them to be involved, because as an IT project manager from before, we never really engaged with, let's just say, the president or anything like that. We, within IT, developed something. If we wanted to do something, we then met with all of the different functions like HR, accounting, whatever it was we were doing. And then we presented what we did uh, to whomever the top levels were, so that they were aware. But the biggest thing is that when you're not involving people until it's too late, that becomes the problem. When you engage them and everybody is in the same, um, everybody understands how important it is, then you have more cooperation. So, I've been on many projects, even where when we have the go ahead and have all of the top level people involved, those are the best projects because they are knowledgeable, they want to know, and they help push the project forward. When they're not as engaged and you're just letting them do it, things kind of tend to fall through. They don't follow things quite as closely, and it extends much longer than it needs to. So a lot of that just depends on how you choose to run your business, how tight you want it to be, how knowledgeable you are or the person above you is in AI, because everybody just freaks out it's AI, but there's different AI systems. So it's just educating, making sure it's documented, and that when they make changes, that it's documented changes. So if you put this one thing where a checklist and you just tell them what products are you using and they write it down, then you know. But if there's no accountability, then those become issues. So that's an issue. So it receives regular governance reporting for senior leadership. It's always important to let the leadership know. And most of the time they don't know, but when they're involved, things run much smoother. And you have to have your committee, cross-functional legal compliance and technology and ethics, that evaluate AI proposals against policy risk before deployment and approval. I will tell you that the best projects that I have had is when I've had all of those individuals on the committee and attend the meetings. Everybody is in the know, and when they know that these individuals are part of it, everybody works together, and what they don't understand, you cover at that time. So that's why that is very, very important, not just with AI, with any major projects that you have going on. They really should understand it and not be surprised that something is not working and then they were never told as to what was occurring. And that happens a lot too, unfortunately. So operational controls, day-to-day monitoring, model performance, tracking, exception reporting, AI owners and compliance officers. So it's just making sure you have the operational controls you need. And when you're prompting, especially when you're prompting, you should have some privacy controls in there too, because you don't want it to get out there. And that's really the biggest thing. There's always somebody who knows how to infiltrate a business. When you put your stuff out there, then they know more about it than you do. And unfortunately, that becomes an issue. So decision ownership, who's accountable when AI acts? Whose decision is it must have human ownership, because we are the humans working on it, right? Who has the individual role, accepts responsibility, the outcome when decisions are automated, accountability diffusion when everyone assumes somebody else is responsible. When everybody knows what they're responsible for, you don't have a problem. It's when people do not accept responsibility for their piece of the pie, so to speak. So you have accountable owner who accepts it. So when you're taking on a project, you're the first person. The responsible operator manages, monitors AI daily. There's somebody in some organization that is monitoring that. And keep your stakeholders impacted and informed. And it is just, again, making sure that you are keeping everybody informed about what is going on. And everybody is usually your top level. But even your median level or anybody working on it should understand what's going on. And it should be documented. It should say who's doing what applications you're using, what issues you've had, what you've done to correct them, and how the project is moving forward in any AI function. So the RACI model is what everybody usually uses. It's responsible, it's accountable, it's consulted, and it's informed. and it's also adapted for AI. It provides organizations with a practical tool for mapping ownership in the enterprise portfolio. So I think it's just good to make sure if I'm in charge of the project, I'm the accountable owner. But usually, sometimes it's reversed. The informed stakeholders are really the accountable owners when you first start off, and then you're the person taking the project on, and then it changes. But you're always keeping the stakeholders informed of what's going on. And that's really probably the biggest thing, is that so many people don't keep people informed. And that's not the most important thing to them, but it is the most important thing to the organization. Should you leave? Should you decide you're tired of it, don't want to do it anymore? It leaves your organization with a problem if they don't have everything documented. So AI policies and controls. Your policies translate your governance, your intent into enforceable rules, controls, operations that rule through technical procedures. They form guardrails. They keep AI systems within acceptable boundaries. There again, AI policies. And this is where people are starting to learn how to use AI policies or to develop them. And part of that is knowing exactly what you're doing. And that makes a difference. But that is with any, it's similar to any project. If any of you have worked on just projects in general, you still have to follow policies. If you sign a contract, you're going to do this, this, and this, then guess what? You do A, B, and C just as they require. And if you're, the difference is now, if you use AI, you need to say what you're using AI and how you're using and what you're developing with it. That's the difference right there. But it protects them because there's so many tools out there that not everybody is familiar with them. And it also goes to it, like I say, once again, if somebody leaves, it leaves you without a person who understands you. It leaves you. That's the word I want to use. You're just sort of let down at that moment because you don't know what's going on. You haven't kept up with that. And now the most important person who's been in control and in charge is gone. And they didn't document, they didn't do what they needed to do. And that's where the problem happens. And that happens whether you have a software upgrade or anything else, you have to document and still know what's going on. Any questions? Okay.
Nope, nothing in the chat.
Okay. Thank you. So the policy and control stack. So you have AI policy architecture. So before you always had software architecture, whatever you're working on, it kind of is the same thing. It operates through multiple layers, enterprise-wide principles down to system-specific technical controls. Each layer reinforces the other. So it's just as you're working on your projects, just like you did before, and you're using AI, it's a little bit different now because you have to include that, whereas before you weren't using it, you didn't have to include it. So now you want to define which AI applications are permitted, restricted, or prohibited within the organization. So you establish acceptable use of boundaries for employees, vendors, and partners. The same thing as when you have a project. You always know who's permitted within the organization or outside the organization. They have boundaries, and vendors and partners and employees know what they are. And you have security who monitors that. You have people who have their own roles. It's the same thing, just you're adding that other layer of AI. And AI is a little bit different. And that's really the biggest thing. So model risk management specifies requirements, model validation, performance monitoring, documentation, retirement. So, you know, a lot of legacy systems that people have out there, they're obviously trying to retire them, but they need some of the data. They transfer some of the data, or else they keep the data where it's at, and then they don't need it. But then there are things that they like good about it. So you want to make sure that you model it so that it kind of moves forward into the next phase of what you're doing. So there's a lot of different things, but there's a lot of regulatory expectations, especially in the financial services. And I would say in medical services as well, because anything that is private and has a name, a social security, and personal information is really, really I can't stress enough, you need to make sure that you're documenting it, that you're being cognizant of making sure that you're following the guidelines. And data governance integration is just ensures AI systems operate only on data that meets quality, consent, lineage standards, prevents garbage in, garbage out, governance failures. So this is the learning process right now for a lot of people for this data governance. It's just the governance is out there and they're monitoring it. And then there's technical controls, access restrictions, audit logging, output monitoring, bias detection tools embedded directly into AI systems, architecture, and deployment pipeline. There's a lot of stuff being used now as well for technical controls. So with all of this, all of these things, you have to be careful when you're monitoring, and hopefully it makes your job easier. And some people are not sure. They're looking at you for guidance and how to implement AI. What do they have to worry about, and what do they need to do? And those who do AI implementation need to know those things and how it works with the other tools that they currently have. So it takes a lot of knowledge there.
May I ask a question? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
On the previous slide, the technical controls, what type of
Mhm.
technical controls are you referring to? Something that can actually detect bias? What is meant by that?
That can be tapped. So you have restrictions and logging. So there's output monitoring, and what they do is they embed it into the AI system, and it can track and do different things. And I can't tell you specifically which ones are out there, but there are tools out there. So they're monitoring AI as best as they can, and I see that for regulatory moving forward, there's going to be different kinds of applications coming out that will be able to pick up that. So when you have your own systems and you're going through it, how do you monitor the information? It goes through the system. Do you see what applications you're using, right? You know who touches it because everybody has a log on. It goes in through a channel. From that, it provides other things. They're also just learning, there's different monitoring styles, and I don't know all of them, but there's a lot of different things that are out there. And I think the thing is what really works and what really doesn't at this time. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
No problem. So I can't say this is a better one or this is a better one because it's too early to tell, honestly. But some people say certain ones are, and I'm not the expert on that part, so I'm not going to say this is the best one if I don't work with it, I don't know. Okay. Accountability and frameworks. So AI decisions are assigned, communicated, and enforced across the organization. So this is probably the most important part as well when you have core components, role definitions, their titles, their duties, AI owners, reviewers, and auditors. Everybody has a role in what you're doing, right? So what you want to do is make sure that those are clearly defined. And everything needs to be documented just like it's documented now. The only difference is we have to document the AI portion of it, what you use. And AI systems make which decisions. That is the big key right there. AI systems, which makes the decisions. That is what people want to know. Do we believe everything AI says and that's accurate? Do we not? That's a matter of opinion. I have my own opinion, but it doesn't matter. I'm just here to teach the governance today. But escalation paths define procedures for flagging and resolving AI incidents. It's a lot of documentation, and if you've worked on IT projects, it's very similar. Excuse me. Consequences, mechanisms, enforce outcomes for policy violations. And part of that policy violations is doing your work outside of if you're testing or entering information outside your work environment. And like I say, and if it's, if it has to do with names, numbers, social security, privacy things, and they're trying it and they are not, there's no safety on that end, and it's out there, somebody gets it, that is probably the biggest consequence. So very, very important. So these are components. They're making everybody accountable from each point, but actually everybody usually is accountable on each point of this, except because AI is so new that they want to make sure that they understand and feel good about it, because they want to know that there's integrity in it and that these individuals who are using it are making the right decisions and understand if it's harmful or erroneous, who authorized the system, who monitored it, they should have caught the error, and what happens next. That little bit of a decision right there, when you don't monitor, you don't pay attention, and then it just goes to the wayside, and then they got to go back and refigure it. And where was the problem? When did it begin? This is why it's important for everybody to know what their duty is. The definitions, the registration, the escalation paths, and the consequences. It's not about blame, it's about systematic integrity. And it all goes down to these various individuals and the ability to learn, correct, and improve continuously. And like I say, it's a time where people have to understand that when you're making changes, you have to understand why you're doing it and have it written down. So when you decide that you're tired of it, somebody else can pick it up because it's fully documented. So it kind of reminds me going back to the 70s and 80s when things were much more manual and you had to document and whatnot before everything became automated. It was like that. So this is like a new thing. Again, starting fresh and moving forward. But of course, this is automated. You just have to make sure you understand how it works and how it flows. Any questions on this? Okay. Accountability, failure, recognizing the patterns are rarely sudden collapses. There's small gaps compounding over time, recognizing the warning signs. So there's no named owner. AI systems operating in production with no designated accountable individual or role. That goes back to the previous one. You need to define the role, who's responsible. Invisible decisions, automated decisions affecting customers or employees with no audit trail or explainability. Who is making that decision? One of the roles, again, you have to go back to roles. Policy orphans, AI deployments that fall through gaps between existing policies and are covered by nobody. So this is all documentation, accountability, making sure you're doing it. And teams aware of AI errors or biases, but lacking clear escalation path or fear of repercussions. I can understand that. But there again, if you have a documented process, you have roles and responsibility of who claims ownership in each of these areas, then you know who to go back to. But if you just say, okay, let's all get out there and work on it together and we'll figure it out as we go, but nobody is accountable. And maybe they're working together. One's doing one piece, one's doing another. One may be documenting, one may not be. It's just enforcing that everybody is documenting, understands their roles. And if there's an issue that you catch it basically, and if you don't catch it, it's okay. You fix it when you catch it and try to understand exactly what happened. That's the same thing in IT too. It's the same process. But now you just really have to make sure that ownership is important. So and most people don't understand what other individuals are doing. And that's kind of unfortunate because there again, it's new. But we have to kind of go back to when we don't know something, we document, we try, we move forward, we know who's on it, we're brainstorming, this is what we're doing. This was a problem I had. I'm not sure how to proceed. And if you have other AI individuals, you have someone to bounce that thought off back and forth so that you guys can figure it out, hopefully. But what I mean is it's a lot of communication here and a lot of documentation. Any other questions on this? Okay. So then we'll go to governance maturity. Where does your organization stand? Organizations progress through recognizable stages. AI governance. Maturity. Understand your current stage is essential for the first step towards building accountability structures your artificial intelligence portfolio requires. So ad hoc, no formal governance, AI deployed case by case, and no oversight structure. Now, there are people out there who have exactly that. Then you have developing basic policies, exist, accountability, and consistently assigned and rarely enforced. That's developing. And if you had that, basic policies and you add to those policies of what you're doing and making sure that you're being accountable and you're documenting, then you're ahead. But if you're just starting there as well, and you don't enforce it, then you have more chances of having problems. Formal governance is defined, structures in place, rules, policies, approval, workflows documented. That means they probably have learned as they've gone through and they finally have defined because you learn from trial and error. Manage, governance, actively monitored, metrics tracked, incidents reviewed and remediated. That's good because you're learning, you reviewed it, you've made some changes that need to have been made. And if something happened to one person, next person comes in, they could pick up and they may not have quite the same level of maturity as a person who left, but with documentation, somebody can pick up and understand it. Whereas when you don't document, nobody understands it except you. Optimizing, it's continuous, adaptive, and embedded in AI development culture. So those are really the governance maturity, and you'll see as it's going through. And a lot of people are at the ad hoc. A lot of them don't have any formal governance, AI deployed case by case, and nobody's oversighted it to make sure that it's correct or it's not. So I'd say 80% are probably right there. So this is a good opportunity for individuals to make sure when they're looking at an organization's maturity, they know what they're doing, who's doing what, who's responsible, documentation, and is the product being, is there security there too? But we'll get to that. So this gives you a good idea as to how it flows. And so you don't be surprised. I know when people are thinking, I don't want governance because governance is a lot. We don't want people in there looking at what we're doing. But it's just the same thing when we started out with, way back when you first started out, depending on where you started out in your IT career or working with different things, and you did document and you made a mistake and then you had to go back and try to figure it out. It's kind of the same concept, but now it's with AI and just understanding what systems you're working with and what you're not working with. Yeah, let's see. So your learning outcome is from knowledge to action. Having completed this year, you can identify gaps, accountability failures, critically to take meaningful steps towards closing them. Governance is not a compliance checkbox. It's an organizational capability that must be built, sustained, and continuously improved as AI systems grow in scope and in consequence. This is learning. It's adapting, it's teaching, and understanding that, just because you put in a prompt doesn't make the prompt works for everything else. If that's all you're going to do, or if you're going to use it and for whatever it is that you want to work on. I'm not going to give examples because I really don't want to do that right now of what is good and what isn't. But I would just say that make sure that as you're going through, really define what you want, get everybody involved, make sure they're on top of it, and you document. Because once you start documenting and making other people responsible as well, where they outline what they're working on, what they're using, then your chances of success are much greater. But when you're not documenting and you're just kind of flying by the seats of your pants, just try to get things moving, but you don't really understand how you got there. But you got there, and then you got to go back and try to piecemeal it the other way. So just document all the way in the beginning. So what you need to do is to think about as you're moving forward. It's about power and accountability. It defines who has authority to deploy AI and who bears responsibility when things go wrong. That's so important when you put a name and what the responsibility is. But if you don't put a name and nobody's responsible and six of you are working on it together and somebody makes a mistake, well, who really made the mistake if it's not documented? You know, kind of that thing. And every I decision needs a human owner. Accountability diffusion is the enemy. Name the owner, document the chain, enforce the responsibility. Document, document, document. It's kind of like when you're starting something new, it's all you got to document. You just have to document so you understand it. You can only get better as you start enforcing, you start documenting, and you know what is working and what is not working, what needs to be fixed, what you're not sure of. And this is where accountability comes in too. So think about it that way. Policies without controls are aspirations. So good governance requires both the rules and the mechanisms that make those rules and real and enforceable. So when I say good governance too, I really believe that you have to have a policy. It's just like anything else. Your policy, when you have a business and you hand out a policy and it says for IT, you will you're aware that we're using blah, 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 blah. And when you start using other types of other systems to start deploying or to use or to try, you need to document it. So somebody always knows what's going on. You always need to make sure that that's important and that's there. Gaps and compounds, audit early and often. So governance failures rarely arrive as a single event. It's audit surface small gaps because they become systematic risks. Again, it's just process, define, document, and then when you're going through it, you can see the gaps. And as you put it into action, you'll know what is working, what is not working. And that's just the trial of it. Don't make it the real thing until you're really sure about it. And that's your trial and error. So those are the things that are most important. And I know that a lot of people are starting to enforce and do that right now because they don't know. They do not know what AI people are using. They don't. And that's a hard thing. And if you're a vendor and you're going to fix something and you're going to introduce AI into it, and let's just say, I'm not going to say anybody's name because I don't want anybody to think I'm picking on them as far as clients. But when you don't document and you don't disclose, it's always going to be an issue. So make sure that you document, you disclose, you tell, you document what you're doing, how you did it, and what were the results, the issues you had. And then this is what you did to correct it or to change it. And then this is the outcome. And this is what I'm happy with because now it works. So as you document it every single step of the way, everything is golden in that respect because you have documented, it works. And you have said, this is the tools that we are using right now. These are the AI tools we are using. This is the data we used before, and this is the outcome. You have to be very specific. And as you get more experienced with that and you get used to that, it becomes so much easier. So I highly, highly recommend that documentation right now is probably the most important thing. It's really because there's no misunderstanding. They know exactly what you're doing. And if the president or the boss comes in and says, well, how are you doing that? And what tools are you using? And how is this going to affect the company? You can respond to that right away. That's what makes the difference. So think about it that way. And building your governance action plan. So you want to establish and strengthen your AI review committee, cross-functional representation. Develop a decision register for high-stakes AI use cases. Define escalation paths, incident response procedures, and AI-related failures. We learn from what we don't know and what we experience, and we know not to do that again. Assess your organization's governance maturity honestly. Set maturity level with clear roadmap to reach its governance. Excellence is competitive and regulatory advantage that compounds over time. So you want to make sure that you are always, always honest about everything that you do with AI. There's no need to say, it's okay to say, I made a mistake. I tried this. It messed up that. Better to know that than to keep trying to figure out something when you knew what the problem was. And when it's documented, you'll say from this step on, it went perfectly. But when we did this, it went off path and we can't figure out why. And this is where you all brainstorm and somebody else has some expertise can see that and can help. But when you don't document and you just start throwing it out there and moving forward, and it's hard to go back and redesign, reconfigure when you haven't done your due diligence and making sure that you did the things that were important. And documenting is it. So map all your AI systems in your organization, identify named owners for each or flag the gap, review existing AI policies for coverage and blind spots, schedule AI governance review with key stakeholders. Always keep people in the loop because it is just so important that they're aware of what you're doing. And yes, the president and everybody above, they're busy working on their things, but they need to be aware of what's happening in your world, of what you're accomplishing or what you're doing in AI and how it affects them and the organization. That's what makes a difference. And as a team player and as a team, you always work together. You want to make sure that you're all on the same page, or if you don't understand something, you find out and you document. It's easier to move forward with documentation than it is to not. So anybody who has built a system of any sort, I know that you document. Any questions on that? Okay. Well, that was it for the governance portion of it. But there is so much more, governance, ethics, very, very important. And also your contract. So they kind of go hand in hand. But I think that as you're moving forward with AI, and because it's so new in different areas, and not everyone has expertise, is not the expert in one particular area, but then you find so many other people are. So reach out and learn from others and just make sure that everybody is communicating. I think it's really important. And within each organization that you make sure that if they're not doing it now, that you say, we need to start documenting. Let's have some policies in place so everybody understands it. And if your policy is to just work from your work and you have better security there, so you don't worry about what goes out of your organization, but if they choose to work from home, that they have a secure line to get in there and that everything has multi-authentication. I can't even talk today. And you just use it. So you just need to make sure that you're communicating and that you're following guidelines and that you are in alignment with whatever your organization's alignment. And if you don't have an organization, then make sure you're in alignment when you're going and you're meeting with people, that you understand the process, that you have documented as well, and you know what you're doing and what your capabilities are. And that way, if in a year or two you leave and something else happens, somebody else can pick up. It's always about learning, but always make sure documentation is there and who's the responsible person. So I hope this was helpful for you all. It's a lot, but it's also good because it just it's exciting. It's an exciting time now because it's a lot of learning. It's something new. Um, and I can only see in the future how things are just going to move forward. But it's a time of learning, a time of training, and a time of enforcing policy and governance. So with that, if you have no questions, have a great Wednesday.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Bernadette. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I've dropped the recommended feedback form for everyone. If
Please.
you don't mind taking a few minutes to sign it. Thank you all so much. And Bernadette, thank you again so much. Anand, the presentation will be shared as well as the video in about 24 hours.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. I'm going to close the meeting in about 30 seconds.
Oops.